Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Joining me today is Michael Holden, who is Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. Thanks for joining us today, Michael.
Thank you.
Let's talk about labor numbers that were released today by Statistics Canada. First, we'll look at the Calgary region. In terms of jobs created in September, 10,400. The unemployment rate in Calgary fell to 8.9% from 9.6% the previous month. Tell me what's happening in the labor market here in Calgary these days.
Well, as you mentioned, this is it's a pretty healthy jump in the number of jobs that we're seeing in Calgary, and where we're seeing that activity taking place is it's largely focused in areas like transportation and logistics and in professional services. And so those are areas that the Calgary economy depends on those particular sectors. I think that on the transportation side, we're seeing a fairly substantial surge in air traffic coming through. WestJet has noted that they're having trouble staffing up and being able to get people to operate all with sufficient capacity to meet all the demand that they're having. So I think that factors like that are what's driving this growth in Calgary.
Okay, let's talk about the Alberta numbers. On a monthly basis, 19,600 jobs were created. The unemployment rate, though, rose to 8.1% from 7.9% the previous month. What about Alberta and what's happening here?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty good month for the province. I mean, close to 20,000 new jobs is a pretty solid total. It's about a 0.9% increase, which is pretty good. There are a lot of little things that are actually going on in the Alberta economy writ large over the last bit. And so to start with, a lot of those jobs, about three quarters, but 15,000 were in wholesale retail trade. So there's a huge jump there. We saw a large increase in healthcare employment, about 5,000 jobs there, and about another 5,000 in the public service. And those 5,000 jobs are probably a bit of a blip. That's very likely to be the result of some staffing up for the federal election that took place last month. And so that probably inflates the numbers a little bit for the province, but it's still solid. I mean, 20,000 jobs is good, and 25,000 new full-time jobs. There's a loss of 5,000 part-time jobs. So when you're seeing that kind of full-time job creation, those are solid numbers.
Yeah. Now, I don't recall the actual numbers, but it seems I think we're still behind the pre-pandemic level of employment, right?
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. Like in terms of the straight actual number of jobs, we have just passed pre-pandemic employment.
Okay.
The problem, though, is that that's more than 18 months ago, and the population's been growing since that time. So the number of a good way of looking at this is the employment rate, which is straight up the number of people who have a job, who are over the age of 15. And pre-pandemic, that was at 65%, and right now it's sitting at 64%. It's increasing. It's still getting up close to that point. So if you account for population growth, we still haven't quite recovered yet.
Okay, when you look at Calgary and in Alberta in general, what are your thoughts for the rest of this year? We're into the final quarter of 2021. Where do you see the labor market going in this province?
Well, I think we're going to see a continued steady recovery. I mean, every time we think about this and talk about it, the big elephant in the room, obviously, is what's happening with COVID-19 cases and ICU admissions. Yeah. And so that's always going to be a big unknown about how that's going to end up affecting the economy. But we are seeing this slow, gradual recovery. There are certain areas where we're still seeing a lot of weakness. All the hospitality industries have continued to be slow in recovering. And so that's a concern that we're watching for. But I think that on the whole, we're going to continue to see a steady increase, and as we head through to the end of the year with a couple of bumps on the way.
Okay, super. Now, I know one thing that you often, when we've talked about these numbers in the past, you've often looked at the long-term unemployment status here. Was there anything in those numbers today from Stats Can that you can talk about?
Yeah, there's not a lot different. I think in August, we had a long-term unemployment rate. That's if you've been out of a job for more than a year, of 2.2%, which doesn't sound like a very big number, but it actually really is. to the national average. It improved very slightly in September, down to 2.1%. But it's really a question of specific cohorts within the population on that. And so what we're seeing right now is that young men continue to struggle to find employment, but who's really struggling to find jobs are workers who are older, who are over 55 years old. So older men and especially older women are having a hard time getting back into the workforce.
Well, I'm glad I got a job. So, yeah, I know it's a tough dynamic right there. What about, just the last thing I want to ask you, Mike, is, obviously the employment numbers drive so much, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? The ripple down effect, obviously, of people being employed, impact on the housing market, impact on retail sales, all that type of stuff.
Oh yeah, all of these numbers, like strong jobs numbers, could be self-reinforcing through the economy, because as more people start working and they make money, they start spending more money, which then in turn creates more jobs. And so yeah, when you're on that cycle, it's always a positive thing. And I think one of the things that I should mention that we saw in this labor force, these labor force numbers, you mentioned earlier that the unemployment rate went up to 8.1%. And I think the one thing that was really remarkable in these September numbers that we'd kind of talked about this in July and August, this expectation that once the school year starts, that there could be a surge in the number of people who are coming back to work, and we did see exactly that. The reason that employment rate went up in spite of pretty good jobs numbers is that there was a huge increase in the number of Albertans who are actively looking for work. Yeah. So that participation rate went from 69% to 69.7, which doesn't sound like it's a big jump, to 0.7 percentage points, but that's actually, I had to look this up, it's the biggest, outside of pandemic effect, it's the biggest increase in more than 10 years in a single month. And so we saw this surge of people coming back into work or looking for work. And there's especially a surge in women, working age women, who are coming back into work. So I mentioned before, there's about 20,000 jobs that were created. Literally all of those jobs went to women. There was actually a loss of jobs among men in the province. And so this return of women to the workforce is something that's very welcome and will help drive the economy forward in the ways that you just asked.
And one of the things too that I keep hearing, and not only hearing, but seeing, is quote unquote labor shortage that we're facing. And I can't go anywhere without seeing a sign, that somebody's hiring or something like that. Why is that? Why are we in that situation where we have so many jobs that are available right now?
It is really a unique situation that we're in right now. There's a whole bunch of factors that are involved. In some cases, industries in hospitality and tourism are having a really hard time finding people to work, restaurants and bars and hotels, and that's a very specific type of problem. In other industries, it's in some senses it's a mismatch between the skills that people have and the skills that businesses are currently looking for. Yeah. And so that's a bit of a longer term policy challenge that we need to deal with. But you're absolutely right. It's, businesses have told us from a wide range of industries that they're desperately looking for workers and they can't find the ones that they need.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Michael, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too. And that was Michael Holden, who is Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Thanks for joining us.